Welcome back. Today we're going to do a really old school fly with kind of a just a little flair to it. This fly, there's a couple things about this. It's called the Casual Dress. On the back of Trout, which is, in my opinion, the greatest fishing book ever written by Joe Brooks. But there's a couple things about this. And I'll show you in the book, but there's a fly, probably be easier if I put it here. This is called the Casual Dress. I have fished this fly. It's one of this book came out in 1972. I started tying this fly as a kid, and I never could do it quite as well as the picture, but I've caught so many fish on this. I tie this in different variations and probably 5 different sizes, but I'm going to do the original kind of bigger one today. But the other thing I was talking about in this, there's 2 things on this picture. I didn't realize it. This thing always hangs up behind me. There's this picture right here of the Casual Dress, which I love. And the originals, this is a spuddler in that brown trout's mouth. That fly did more for me from the streamer world. That thing I would look at that picture every day. It's on page 29 of the book if you were curious. But inside the book here, you'll see, and it's just, if anybody knows this, I've been looking and looking. Granny Grandstorms, nymphs, this is in the book, right? All these flies. I have no idea who this tyer was. One of the greatest tyers ever. This guy's flies, or gal, whoever it is, are so clean. And this is 1972. And they're in front of everything. There's just a million of them. But anyway, here's the Casual Dress right here. This is the big, you can see it's a big fly. I'm not going to do it that big. And I never did it on quite that big a gap hook anyway. But at any rate, it's just a really cool looking fly. It's got a lot of style. And so, but it was pretty basic. And here, I've got the 3 here. I do it in a lot of colors. But this is the original right here. It's got this big muskrat collar out here, which is really cool. This is just my version of it. It's a hare's ear. I did a gold rib on this one. This has got the Muskrat Tail, gold rib, hare's ear. On my own, and I'll get to that when we talk about the ribs, I almost always did it with a dark rib, not with the gold. But the one I'm going to do today, let me finish this. This is the muskrat. The front was done originally with either ostrich or with peacock herl. I'm going to do, just because I think it's just a little dressier, and I just like, I tie a lot of dubbing loops. I just think it's a little cleaner looking, little dressier when you do the pine squirrel on the front. But this is kind of the version that I do. And what it's going to be is, here's the original. There's no hackle on it. It's just this collar. I do a collar, and then I do a hackle in front of it, and then I do the little head of the black pine squirrel. And so you'll see that. And this is what I was talking about. You look inside here. When I do my own, and I do this on a lot of flies, I use a darker rib. I mean, I do both, but I tend to do kind of a blacker rib. In the old days, I was showing Jeremy, I found this, again, some really old tire, really old school. This came from the Paul Young Company, and they called it button thread, but I use this is the Sable Company dry flies, Emil Rosie Rosander tire. But I use this dark burgundy stuff. And this was kind of the beginning of me using all that burgundy thread for flies, but I liked that dark look. And on this one, I'm going to use Crystal Flash, just black. I use this a lot. It's just kind of it's black, but it gives a little bit of shine, so you kind of have got the gold rib hare's ear, or the gold rib, like in a hare's ear. But it's black, but it's a little reflective. And so, other than that, and on the original, I think they used thread if they used anything. And the original one might have been a noodle, just really tight wrap, and just segmented on its own. So, on this 3761 or this is going to be a 10 or 7062. Any extra heavy, I like a 2X long, any extra heavy nymph hook. That's up to you. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I've tied it in so many different, like I said, I go down to like a 14 in this thing, and it's just one of those, you can just kind of dress it however you like. But that's what I'm using on that. The flash is going to be the Crystal Flash, black, And again, on the gold one, I still use the black, and I basically do it in 3 colors. So those 3. The body is going to be SLF Whitlock. Like I said, I've said this in so many videos. Anything Whitlock does for color, I'm all about it. And I'm going to use the brown olive on this one here. This is just the SLFW. For the collar, it's going to be pine squirrel. Pine squirrel, I'm just going to use the brown. It's just got a little hint of brown in it, and just it's dressy. And then for the hackle, you should have seen me trying. I ran out of olive partridge, and so and this thing is so gone. I found 3 hackles in this whole thing, right? And so, but that's what I like to use, really big hackle. And I want to make just a comment about this, because I almost always, I'm not a big fan of package materials like this so much, because it's random. But at this point, with a Hungarian partridge, it is $50 for one of these. These are $7-8 for a bag of this stuff. I went through this, and this is one time I would suggest that you might look into these. I mean, everybody likes to have the skins, and they're versatile, and you get a little different sizes. I went through this. I found a lot of sizes, and if you're going to do especially flies this size, this is a good value. It's $7 versus 50, and you're going to get dozens of hackles in there. And the last thing I'm going to have is another pine squirrel. And for those of you who watch a lot, you know I tie with this stuff a lot. I just really dig it. It's a super dressy little collar we're going to end up with. And so I'm going to need that, won't need that. I'll need that, won't need that. So we'll get this out of the way. And again, I really encourage you to get this, the covers off of this. Get this trout book, borrow it, go to the library, buy it, wherever you can find it. This is one of 6 of mine, just in case I lose one. And so there's a ton of flies in there that are really fun to tie. Just gives you some ideas. Oh, and I'm using 12-aught Semperfli olive. So these, and you've got an option here, however you'd like. If you want to weight this, I do them 2 ways. If on my lake flies, because I like this is a good little stripping fly. If I'm using intermediate lines or sinking lines, I don't tend to weight my flies. If I'm going to go out and nymph this fly, or maybe on a floater even if it's shallow, I'll add 10 turns of 025. And so I'm not going to put anything on this one today. I'm just going to run it out. It's your option. And if you do that, you know, I'll put it on just because, so we can see where it is.
Kick those skins out too.
Skins? It's all right. So I'll put it on here just so you can see where to put it. But again, 10 turns is plenty. You're not looking for this thing to drop, right? You just want it. It's a pulser. This fly's got a lot of movement, like a hare's ear, even more. So just don't overweight it. And I want it in the center, but remember we're going to put this collar on here, so I don't want any buildup around. I don't want to have to fight that. Get that stupid little tag in there. Get over there. All right, so when you put this on, remember we're going to have this collar. Well, on this one, we're going to have this collar, right? I don't want to have to fight this and have more build yet. So make sure that's in the middle when you put that on. And I kind of set, like right here, I'm going to set my thread, and it's just from being used to tying them where I want that to drop. And I'm going to have my collar, then my hackle, and then that little dressy final collar, that little black pine squirrel one. So you'll get used to what you like. And again, I tend not to weight them too much, but it's pretty much dead center right now. So I'm just going to give a little bit of build here, just so what you don't want to have is you don't want to get right here and fall off the front of that. So you're wrapping this stuff, and it's going to be a dubbing loop collar, which is different than the original. I'll get to that, but when you're doing those, you don't want it to fall off and leave a gap. So I'm building a little tiny bit of a dam here, just so I don't fall off the world when I'm coming forward here. So come here, get back here. Again, right to the gouge, so your thread's hanging down. Just give yourself some consistency right where your gouge, your barb starts. Now on this tail, original, this is the original one right here. It's got muskrat tail. You could do that. You could use your pine squirrel. I tend to use, because I use these a lot for the lakes, And I used it, and by the way, this was one of my best steelhead flies ever, in the traditional style right there. And I did use it with the hair tail. I started doing it for steelhead and for nymphing crane flies. That's what Jeremy is just stoked for these things, because it's such a good looking crane fly. And I started using the philo plume tail. So I would take that, where's that skin? I was trying to find one. This is so beat up. I was trying to find one. Usually you can get back in here and you'll find some just nice fuzzy ones. I end up finding one hackle out of that whole thing. So I've got my money's worth out of that one. And if on this thing, you can see it's kind of ratty. You can always come in here and just use your thumbnail and kind of even those out if you want. It won't hurt a thing when you look at it. And so you're going to make this, I usually make it about 1/3 of the body length. And again, that's totally up to you. If you're a lake fisherman and you want a little bit more movement, put a little longer tail on it. If you're going to dead drift nymph it, just shorten it up a little bit. So I'm going to leave that in there. We're just going to make nice even wraps forward. I'm going to keep that right on top and come off this front there. Cut it off just in front of that. Again, no bump. And that'll just clean up. That's going to allow me to just dub right forward and not have any bumps. I'm not going to fall off the face of that. And if you still have a little bit, like right there, it was still a little bit, just add a little bit of bulk to it right there. Same thing with when I come off the back side of that. See how that's just cleaned up now? Easy peasy. Now I'm going to take a piece of this black. I usually double this over. There's one that's loose. I usually double this over. Come back to where that ties in. I'm just helping build everything you build into this. Every time you put in a material, build it to eliminate that bump. I tied it in right there at the back side, gave myself a little bit of a build up there, and I'm going to advance forward with this. So now I'm going to take with my dubbing loop. So now I'm going to take a dubbing loop, and when I tie that in, you'll see on the close-up here, I tend to come forward just a little bit of where the back one is, and I just wrap back to it like that to tighten that up. And I don't care, I want a little bit of gap right there. That's just, you'll see people fighting to get that on. And it's pretty simple if you get used to doing how you address that. So right now I'm going to bring this forward, and I've got to have a point where I see, and again, it's just, you're going to have to tie 2 or 3 of them. You'll see where you want it. I'm going to put that big collar right here. I'm going to have the hackle in front of it, and then I'll have my little dressy head that's going to go on there. It's not a head, it's kind of a collar. Okay, so now I'm going to take this olive brown, and again, I've said this in at least 24 videos. Dave Whitlock is one of the, he's a great artist. His color blends just work for me. I really dig them. If you want to make your own, if you want to do it out of hair's ear, whatever, you can do whatever, but this is just it's got just enough, just the right amount of flash in it, where it's not overly flashy, but it's enough that it just gives it a little bit of glisten. And so what I'm doing here is I'm kind of picking that, I don't know if you can see that or not, I'm building a taper. I'm building a little bit of a V here, and you can see this, you just put it, when you can look at it in your hand, when you get it all done, you just want it to be sparse up front and thicker at the back, just a little bit. And this one's not quite as, you always want to taper. This one's a little bit more tubular. It's not quite as tapered because you're going to have that big thorax you're going to build. So look at it before you go and spin this, and you can adjust this. I do not wax my thread with these. I don't want it to be sticking around. It'll stick fine. And then I just kind of look it over before I spin it. And when you spin it, it should be just slightly bigger at the back than in the front. So get out of there. So we're going to get one good clean. I've got 12-aught here, so I can't reef on it too hard. One clean wrap, and just move forward till you get to that, right where it falls off where we built that, so it's going to fall right into there. Not going to have any bumps. Nip you. Now, before you go too far here, You see people do this both ways. I tend to, I'm just looking to see if I have enough pick to my body. I want it, I want it to be just kind of undulating out there. And I pick it out a little bit in advance. And some people just like to go and do that later. I tend to I don't like to rough up this stuff that's, this synthetics. It's broken before, so I tend to do it in advance. And if I still have to afterwards, then I'll go ahead and I'll still, go in there and dub it, pick it out if it's not dubbed enough. So I'm going to just spin this around, and I'm going to get and I'm kind of sinking that down kind of tight. I don't want it hanging way out there, just nice even wraps, whatever, 5, 6, whatever you like. We'll fold that over. And now you can see, that it's kind of sunk down in there, right? And I pulled it kind of tight so it would get right down in the hair. And if you wanted to right now, you can pick it out a little bit, and it's not going to hurt anything. You'll do whatever you like the looks of. So now I've got just the nice little picky body. Remember, the more you fish this just a little bit, it's going to pick out a little bit on its own. So now we're going to put the collar. If you're doing the original, when you look at the original, I'll use the picture because it's a perfect tie. When you look at this big dressy collar, there's 2 ways to do this. Now this one, when you're tying this in, you cut pieces and you tie it in. I'm going to do a dubbing loop because I get almost the same, but you'll never get this perfect lay if you do the way I'm going to do it. And when I did this one, when I did the natural, I laid it in and tied it in pieces, 4 pieces usually for me. But I'm going to do it because this is kind of a modified version. It's just my way of how I do my own. And like I said, if you've watched me tie before, I do a lot of my dry fly bodies with dubbing loops. I like them. I'm not going to need much build here, or much thread to build this. So you see I come right there and just enough. And you're going to have to gauge this. You can see how much I've got left on the hook, about 1/4 of the hook. I've got to get this dubbing loop, hackle, and then a little dress with not too much of a head. And so that's just, doing a handful of them. So I'm going to come in here and I've got this pine squirrel and I'm looking at the overall hue of the body, right? I'm looking at the colors. And when you look at these, you've always got the piece down the back that's brown, or it's dyed, obviously. It's brown. And so I'm looking for whatever shades I like. All right, so I'm going to come on the spine. It's a little pickier. And I'm just going to get some of those brown hues. I'm just going to come in and cut it. Whoops, a little bit deep there. Got a little bit of hide with that. And so I'm just looking at it. I got enough to do 3 there. So I've got this all in one piece. And I'm gonna take this and I'm going to just kind of judge. I want it to be about 1/3 of the overall body value, so but I'm going to have to put it in the loop. So I'm going to come in here and it's only going to take a couple, maybe a turn and a half. 2 at the most. And so I'm keeping, you notice I keep everything straight. And I'm gonna kind of judge it, right? And I'm gonna cut this in advance. And if you don't manhandle this stuff, if you just come in, your scissors are sharp, you'll be able to cut that, open your loop, and again, no wax, right in. And if you don't have any sticklers on your finger like I do, we're having a little issue here. My dubbing tools loosened up. Okay, so now just all you got to do is I like to tap mine just like that. I'm just looking at it to see if it's, just get it. You can, if you got more than I need there. And you can just you can manipulate this just with your finger. Just touch it, get it however long you want. And I wanted about 1/3. That little bit of fuzz on the backside is fine. It's going to build a little bulk. You can take it however, this is all up to you. And so, and just twist it. nice and tight. You see I've got that little bit of fuzz. That gives you the build up in the middle. When you leave it out just a little bit, it gives you a little bit of bulk. It's just kind of it builds quicker and it's kind of a nice look. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get one turn started. And I'm going to wet my fingers just a little bit like that. I'm going to come around and we're just going to build this little bit of fuzzy. You'll see it'll build up here just like that does. And just keep stroking it back just a little bit. So I guess I got 3 turns there. And we're just, all right, we're out. And it gives you that little bit of collar, like the actual casual dress that's got the really thick collar. But we're kind of, I use this on this one because I put Hackle on it. I use it a little bit to kind of build this bulbous effect so the Hackle doesn't lay flat against it. So this is gonna build up. And I'm gonna take this and when I wrap the Hackle, because it's got that fuzzy underside, and then it's going to allow that Hackle to kind of breathe and not get trapped around it. So I'm gonna take a regular, this is just off of that partridge skin. It was the last feather that was on that thing, worth using. I'm gonna take this feather and I'm gonna tie it in tip first, and I want the long Hackle. You can gauge it, you know. I want it to hang back way into the body. And that's personal. You do it however you want. But I'm going to take this Hackle, I'm going to tie it in. I'm going to slide that back, strip it back. So I'm going to tip first. I'm going to tie that right in front of this. We're going to just do this, just traditional wet fly. Just a couple turns, just anchor it in. Give yourself a little wax to tighten that. And just fold that back so that it's out of the way. You can nip it off. That'll just keep it nicely, nicely tied in there. Now we're gonna do the same thing we did with the same thing you did with the collar, where we wet your fingers just a little bit and just fold your Hackle back. Just nice and easy. Just, you know, the stems on these aren't that strong. So come around and just, you can use your Hackle. I use my fingers more than I use the Hackle pliers. But if you're using a Hackle, same thing. Just come around, and every time you come around, just keep stroking that back. See how it's folded over and it's just laying back in there? Just come up. You can see that right there. It's both those Hackles are laying back. Just finish it up. I'm gonna, whatever, it's gonna be 3 turns. Okay, nice. So just get that. Fold that over. Just, you can, if it's not too tight, you can snap those off, but get off there. So now you can see you've got this just pretty Hackle just dressed up nice, and great swing fly, by the way. You can see how it's laying back, but you see how it's kind of sticking up. It can't lay down because of that collar we put on before. It can't quite lay down, and so when it's wet, it tends to be bulbous like that. It just kind of puffs up a little bit. So now all we need to do is put on the dress. This is simply, and we're going to do another collar here. I'm going to come forward just a little bit, catch your loop, move back forward. Just a little bit of wax to keep you where you want. And you can do it right now. You know, when you look at this OG, that is not a collar. That's either peacock or it's ostrich herl. I couldn't tell which. I just really love these dubbing loop collars. I love the black sheen to this pine squirrel. But again, I don't want it super long, and so it's just I don't know. Might look like eyes. I don't know what it looks like. So I'm going to come in here on the side of this, and I'm just going to find. I picked through this one pretty good right on the edge. I'm looking for the hair that's the length that I'm, whatever you want that to be. And by the way, you can trim these too. You can trim these collars. You'll see when I put it on here. And so I don't have much. I'm not working with much here. And so I'm just straightening that out. And again, this is supposed to be. It's just a dress. It doesn't really have much function. And so, same thing as before. This one's going to be even less. I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to have 2 turns probably. and identical as before. We're gonna just get those straight. And I like those long, I like those guard hairs in there. Just going to tap that without pressure. You can see I can move that through there. This one's pretty short. And then very little build. That hair, it could be just slightly longer. That could have been, it should be all right. I got a little bit, because that was, I kind of got down by the hind end of that thing. And try not to catch your hackle. That piece right there is a little loose. So now we're going to do the same thing. You're going to come in, get your hackle out of the way, get close, just one wrap, wet your fingers, just work it forward. It's just a dress. This is just an accent. Don't like that sitting there. Got a little bit, it's a little forward for me. Fine. Got a little bit of hair stuck in that right there. We'll clean that up. Or as Davey McPhail says, tidy up a bit. So I don't want a really distinct head here. I want kind of a small. And just whip this off. Because this is kind of a light olive thread. So when I hit this with the finish, you'll see it'll darken up. But what you can see is that still in focus there, Jeremy? I think I bumped mine. You can see this. It's just a collar that's just a dress. It's simply, it just looks sexy. It's a really clean little dubbing loop, and it just gives you that black around the head. I've never tied one of these without this. I just think it's, I don't know if it's eyes. I have no idea what they see it for, but I'm going to hit that with the lacquer, and you see it dubs up, it cleans up, it gets nice and dark. I got a little bit on the bottom there. I spilled that lacquer earlier. She's a little smelly. So as you can see, the dress is, it's all picky. That one collar holds this up. A little bit of a black collar in the front of that. Feel free, and what I said earlier, if you want to trim that, you know, if it's too long for you, you can go in and trim it up. Leave a few of the guard hairs always back. I think when you fish this, you're going to see that you can do it, like I said, I do it in a lot of versions. Traditional nymph, that's the original. This style, golden stone, something like that. This fly undulates like crazy in the water. Dead drift, that's even better with the hackle. But you'll see it's a really good slow strip fly too. It's a very versatile fly. That's the casual dress with just a slight upgrade. Hope you like it. Hope it helps you out.